Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back once again for another fantastic episode of Stories Around Azeroth. As always, I am Pete Titans Creed Nevercoat, joined by the most beloved gnome this side of the Eastern Kingdoms, one Mr. Frazley Tastic. And it is once again an honour and a privilege to be joined by one DesMephisto this week. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing fantastic, and thank you for having me.
Not a problem. Have you had an enjoyable week in Warcraft?
Of course, that 20% or 20%, 100% XP buff has been incredible.
Yeah. It's been ridiculous.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I'm like, Blizzard, if I could pay $25 a month just to have that till Shadowlands, could I do it?
No, we've already you've told me off about giving Blizzard monetary ideas.
No, the monetary idea I want is just more account space.
Yes.
What gives the 100% XP buff if I can't level any more characters?
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? Oh my goodness. Mr. Frazley, how are you this week?
I've been good. With that XP boost, I now have a Mecha Gnome at 120.
Yep.
Nice.
And I got the Heritage Armor. And did I tell you, Pete? And if not, I just want to rub it in again. Did I tell you what dropped during Time Walking?
Oh, yeah. You may as well tell it for the people who don't know.
During Time Walking, I was just going by, and all of a sudden I'm like, what's this? Mount? It's the infinite time. You're like, what is that? What is that? And like chat's just like firing off, like going like, what? I'm like, I'm processing what this is. I did not realize that there's a mount that drops in Time Walking.
I would say I'm surprised, but you're the guy who thought Ashes of Alar dropped from Alar and not actually Kael'thas, so...
Yeah, it should drop from Alar.
Jesus.
I mean, it makes sense, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's his argument, but then, you know, it wouldn't surprise me to find out if every time he's gone into Ice Crown for Invincible, he's been doing it on 10 man and not 25.
And a normal... You know, Ice Crown always sets you to normal when you go in there. You have to, even if you're set to heroic before you walk into Ice Crown, it always does for me. I go in, I set heroic under difficulty. I walk in, and it sets me to normal.
That depends on the last instance you've been to. If you go to an older instance where it doesn't have a heroic difficulty, it will lower your settings.
Okay.
That's the way the game kind of works. So
I hope I've been going on 25 on Ice Crown.
Well, who knows? I just had a thought that might be the thing that you've been doing.
Oh no.
Because I've been going back and I've been doing a lot of pet hunting recently because I'm on... It's weird because I'm on the long boy grind, but I'm on the long boy grind with the leveling grind because it's very hard to get 100% buff all the time and have the need to do it. And I'm like, gasp. It's weird.
I can't believe people are actually doing the long boy grind. I mean, 5 million gold right now is around $600 US, like 600 in BattleNet money that you could be using to buy a game. I don't know how you guys do it.
So I worked out in British money, if you wanted to buy, because the price of a WoW token is just shy of 200 grand in-game gold. Not sure what it is for NA. I could probably look that information up on Wowhead right now. But if you were to buy the WoW token just to get 5 million gold, it would cost you about 6 grand, is what I worked out. You'd have to buy 6 grand worth of WoW tokens in order to make 5 million to buy a long boy. That's mental to me.
Yeah.
I regret buying my spider mount in Legion. Like, I could really use that 2 million gold right now.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, it's weird that spider mount will still be there, but the long boy won't. But that's what happens when you put an auction house on a mount, I guess.
And I still think I like the theory that maybe we're gonna get like some type of like shadowy death thing, that like maybe the long boy every expansion is gonna get its own auction house mount.
No, they won't do that. The only reason we got the yak is because people liked the mammoth so much in Wrath. That's the only reason that the yak was brought in. Because,
which I bought tokens for.
What I'm hoping the next gold sync mount is actually a guild ship that has not tactile, where it counts as an object, but only at high distances. so people can actually land on your ship and interact, kind of like a garrison almost.
Yeah, that would be cool. It's one of the options that people have been discussing, that if we can't have player housing, give us guild housing, a bit like Guild Wars and oh my goodness, a couple of other MMOs do it. Final Fantasy 14 and Guild Wars, they're the two big ones. But
I've also been leveling the Valkyr, and the Valkyr one is at 60, so I love that boost again. I went from 27 to 60 in 1 week.
well,
but
as someone who does stream a lot of leveling, it must help you.
yes, 100%. Because then when I messed up the wrong way, and I noticed something with the Valkyra. So Leah Wild's been telling me about like how like it has the base camp, and the base camp's great for herb gathering. Well, the base camp kind of sets up a little place. I could see, what if we get player housing that's more portable, because it sets a camp up that you see on your instance, and only you see it, and it has a rested area.
Yeah, but I would like something when it comes to to player housing, that's something like I can set up in Stormwind, and I have like an area that used to be like the park type area. So it's a little area that swells up, and I can put plots down, and I can make it like my garrison, where I can choose to show off my mounts or my pets, you know?
Yeah.
Like if I want to, I could just make everything just one big pet stable and just have all 1,000 plus pets out there.
That would be so cool.
So as you guys can tell, I love Warlords of Draenor, and I mean, like what we're seeing right now with Animal Crossing, sometimes you just want to vibe.
Yeah.
You just want to be there and kind of enjoy, and I feel like we've moved away from that, and it's always go, 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 go. And it's hard to kind of just enjoy the world.
I'd say that's right. It's odd because it kind of, it's definitely a way that the game has changed in the way that it is. Because we're always looking at the moment. I'm trying to fight a way to find a reason to be in game at the moment, and my mind flickers between obviously leveling, which I want to do for the next month, or try and make money, because if I want a long boy grind, there's so much money I have to make per month, you know, or per week even. Like I think if I want it, I need to make 200,000 a week to get it before September. That's if we get it then.
I was hearing that once the longbow is away, Blizzard's going to put in a little thing on the menu bar that says, "Hey, whenever you need a longboy, you just call up, and then it'll teleport you from wherever you are and pay you gold from me while you're there."
You know what worries me the most is that we're going to see the longbow go onto the black market auction house, and it's going to sell for less than 5 million gold.
No, the long boy will be there for gold cap every time it's there. Every time it will be there for gold cap. The biggest problem I have when it comes to making money is that it's the one time you actually have to use your professions. Like it's there for your professions. Now, the only way that I can see that's a viable way to make money in the game is because the only thing for people who don't want to level right now is for potions, it's for flasks, it's for consumables, for Mythic Plus, and for those people that are still raiding. So, okay, I'll take my herbalism character, I'll go through Ny'alotha. Yeah? I'm not a man that's luxurious enough to be able to pay to multi-box 10 accounts and have 10 druids. But I was under the impression that the change that they made to nodes was so that they were there for a fixed time. But it turns out, when one character and his 10 multi-boxing druids flies by on a dead server, one druid per actual realm, and they can all go together and just in one big party, turns out that they can eat an entire node with just one flyby, and then that leaves nothing for anybody else. So it's not a timed, and it's still amount taken.
Oh.
Yeah, it was one of the best and worst things that Blizzard has done. And I mean, this happens to them a lot. Like, it's constantly a double-edged sword. They go ahead and make it so that everyone has a chance to get a node, which is super important, especially in a big world. You know, people feel like they have some resources, but now multi-boxers go ahead and benefit from it all, and everyone else is again suffering.
It's really, if it was just a time thing and then a player was just restricted from having the node, that would be fine. I mean, the only way you can I'm not against penalizing multi-boxers. People, they're paying their own money to do the way that they want to play the game. I've got nothing against that. I'm against the fact that the way they're playing the game penalizes other players.
Yeah.
And the only way I could reasonably see that coming is to have like I want to say like an IP lock, but then basically you're attuning the node to the account so that one account can eat a node, and that would just but that stops multi-boxing in general because that one account has that unless they set it up to different email addresses.
Yeah, because I mean, multiple accounts being under one BattleNet. So what if like each BattleNet's restricted to how much? That way, multiple BattleNet accounts could go there. Because I don't know how devious multi-boxers get if they use multiple BattleNets.
I mean,
Well,
I think that's,
there used to be a point way back when where multi-boxes used to go into battlegrounds and one-shot people, Frazley.
Right.
That's what multi-boxes used to do.
Wow.
yeah, you used to be able to have follow commands in battlegrounds, and so Blizzard shut that down, I think, in Warlords, because it was happening really badly with Ashran. That was it. The multi-boxers were controlling Ashran.
I remember seeing it I think it was Alterac Valley I saw it in. Like way back in the day when there was the mod that you could use for different parties and that to actually queue up using the mod. And you just had just groups of ranged mages mostly, and they just all cast Fire Blast on the same keybind, and then you just saw this one character go from max health to dead because they'd all just had like 10 fireballs hit them at once.
Almost like a mafia.
Yeah, kind of. The Mage Mafia. Exactly. But yes, Mr. Frazley, you've been doing leveling. A lot of it from the sound of it this week.
Yes.
Between dungeons and everything else. And you've, as you said, you got your Mechanome up. But now you've moved over to the Horde and you're getting your Volpira up.
Yes.
How's that been? Working back on the Horde again.
It's been good. It's weird being on a new server. I'm over on Wormrest Accord, so I don't have any of the gold that I can bring up from my tunes on Boulder Fist. So I may actually have to.
So this isn't the same realm that you're leveling your other Horde characters on.
No, because I was part of a guild there that I think that guild's still running. I'm not trying to like name shame any guilds, but I think the one that where Into is. I'll have to talk with Cap on that because Cap might have better clue on that. But yeah, no, I went for this one on Wormrest because I've got a friend who runs a guild on Wormrest, and that's also where like Tosh Mifune is of Half a Report. So
right, yeah.
And so is Captain Swin ... I think I said too much.
I've said too much. He doesn't want people to know he's got Horde characters, you see.
Yeah.
He's not like the rest of us, who try to level one of every race, one of every class and everything else, Cap, or just Fraz, and just want to level for fun. He's not like that. There you go. Yeah. But you're enjoying that still?
Yeah. And I like leveling. It's why I like irons.
Oh right, Iron Man.
Yeah, because with that, I like the act of leveling up, and it's relaxing because when you get to end game, it's a lot more stressful. I was doing time walkings on Mechanum getting up there, and that was actually really stressful because then even in dungeons, I know there's scaling, but you have to be on top of your game. It was nice when I'm leveling on dungeons on this one. You just kind of go in. If you know the dungeon or you know the mechanics, you can.
When you're leveling, you do it casually because you don't use heirlooms or anything else, do you?
I do use heirlooms, but to a point. I still need to maybe buy a token or two to upgrade the final. I don't have the final ranks of heirlooms, but I think I will buy a token for this one.
See, I got to a point where, like, when heirlooms came out, I was like, I must have every heirloom. And then, they decided to make it so heirlooms dropped off Garrosh Hellscream, and I'd never had all the characters at the appropriate level to get all the different weapons. So I think I've got the two-handed axe and maybe the staff. I can't remember because I got really unlucky with the actual drops when it came to that. But yeah, no, now I just have one armor set of each at 120, and then the rest are they're there because they homogenized a lot of the stats since heirlooms became a thing. Mr. Mephisto, the leveler himself.
Yes.
What have you been up to this week, sir?
So as you guys know, or as I said earlier about how I really would like to pay money for more account space, I've more or less ran out of account space on North America, so I've started doing some World of Warriors on EU.
All right.
And
nice.
That's been interesting. really friendly over there. I like the fact that when I'm playing, it's nighttime there, so fewer players, which makes leveling easier too. It's been a lot of joy. I recently did a speed run. It took us 11 hours and 36 minutes to go from 20 to 120.
Wow.
That's with the 100% buff.
Yes, that's with the 100% buff. My fastest time prior to it was around 18 hours, so about a 7-hour shaving off of that.
That's insane. That's absolutely crazy. So what is it that's driven you to warriors specifically? Is it because they're more versatile, or?
Well, so my third level 60 in vanilla was a warrior, and there was something about how at the time every race could be a warrior. And I mean, when you're impressionable and you're young, the idea that no matter what you look like, no matter what you are, that you could take on this cause was something that kind of sat with me, and I really enjoyed the class. I originally always thought I was a warlock, right? Because you would have this, like, you would bring in kind of melee and caster, but warlock didn't really have that kind of theme. And wow. So I fell in love with warrior, and over the years, it's just Blizzard's really been onto something with how they've handled leveling. Leveling over the years has always been a very rewarding experience in Classic, and many people talk about how the leveling and the experience and the immersion that comes from it. And as Fraz was saying, in-game can get really repetitive. It can get stressful. Leveling stays the same. You can find a lot of variation in the content, but I'm kind of getting off topic. But yes, warriors. I forgot what my point was.
No. It's fine. I mean, it's a good point that you make, because there is a lot of variation. We talked about this slightly last week, because this was just a conversation point before 100% was brought in, and we were talking about the different ways you can level between questing, between dungeons, between pet battles, between PvP. There's like loads of different ways, and your I'm going to call it a speed run time. Is that just through questing, or do you mix in dungeons, or?
That's just through questing. I did a lot of dungeons for EU recently, and it's still terrible.
Really?
It is. I think it was in 7.35 is when we got the changes that modified the amount of health that mobs had in dungeons, as well as reduced the amount of XP that you got from them, which was a change made to help new players. I think there's a post on the front page of our WoW right now talking about how they go into dungeons at max level and everyone's killing everything and it's carrying, and how miserable it feels for them. And I think that's part of the reason why dungeons are so painful now, as far as like a leveling tool, because it felt bad before, because I would be able to pull the entire dungeon as a warrior. At like level 25, I could literally run through everything, pull everything, and AoE it down. As a new player, that's not fun. Like, you don't know what's going on, you don't get to experience anything.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I do have to agree, because I think I was doing dungeons when Frazley was streaming. I think this week, when I jumped over to my gnome warrior, and because I don't mind I don't mind tanking when I'm leveling. I actually find it's relatively stress relieving compared to trying to learn how to tank a newer dungeon, because I haven't. I want to do tanking on an alt in Mythic Plus and everything else, just to see how it is in current content. But I think I did a base Mythic Zero once, I think, this expansion, and then we've got come and had all the alt buffs come in, so it's about turning around and deciding what you want to do. But yeah, it's just I got. But yeah, to the point, like, I was in Hellfire Ramparts. I love the dungeon. I think it's one of the best introductionary dungeons in TBC, and the people were just wanted me to pull more than I was comfortable than doing, and they just kept on pushing to pull more, and they started pulling them themselves. I managed it. The healer was able to keep me alive, and but it's like, if I'm gonna tank, I kind of want to do it at my own pace, and I kind of feel. I kind of feel that's what your point is getting at, is that it kind of pushes too much away from that.
Yeah, it makes it difficult for players again, because as you're saying, you're getting encouraged to pull more, you're encouraged to pull more. And that's one of the reasons why we don't see a lot of tanks, especially in in-game content. Anytime you get a new tank, they're like, pull, 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 pull. and it creates this dissonance where new players have really a hard time trying to learn and enjoy the game.
Yeah, but you've obviously over 44. I presume you've got every race at 120.
Yes.
Is there any that you prefer playing more than the other, just because of racials or anything like that?
My two favorite for speed leveling are Zandalari and Dark Iron. Both have incredible racials for moving very quickly. I'm excited to see what I can pull off with Volpera next week, around April 6th to the 10th, because we're going to have Dark Moonfare buff. And I really want to see what we can do with their camp racial and trying to min-max XP and try to keep up everything going. It should be... I'm super excited to see what we can pull off with that.
And in your speed leveling routes, have you found a specific questing route which is better than others? Like, is there a specific zones that you try to follow?
So originally Red Ridge for like Alliance, Red Ridge, Duskwood, STV, Western Plaguelands, really really good zones, especially now with the 100% XP buff because we can minimize travel time even more. However, because I've given away all this information for free, it's a highly active zone now,
Right.
and it makes it harder to pull this off. So I've had to readapt routes. The 11-hour 36-minute run was with Darkshore and just trying to figure out how to connect things. It's been interesting. It's constantly evolving. I'm excited for Shadowlands just because how I approach routes is going to have to completely change now. And that's just I can't wait.
Yeah, no, I mean, when it comes to routes and everything else, it's definitely going to be a thing. I think everybody in this call right now is looking forward to Shadowlands. And
Yes.
when we can all get our greasy mitts and paws on it, to between having a look at the new starting zone to finding out where is going to be best to level, to having a look at covenants and everything else. And I don't know, it's definitely going to be fun. Is there anything in terms of the leveling structure from Shadowlands that you're looking forward to?
Everything. um, So one of the things that I've always felt that was really a disconnect as we've gone over the years with mounts is they don't really have a lot of fluidity. So having normal riding, epic riding, normal flying, epic flying, it feels really disconnecting. And especially since the time is, going to be drastically reduced. I think this with the 100% XP, this will probably be our new leveling speed. Approximately, we might actually get it just a bit lower from changes in zones. But
I mean,
imagine having to go back to get something every hour.
well, that's what you play Classic for, isn't it?
Right,
Like, to
right.
go backwards and forwards. So,
But even in Classic, you're not going back technically every hour. You could be out for like 2-ish, 3-ish. It kind of takes you out of the immersion. Because, like,
yeah,
if that, yeah.
I'd agree with that a little bit. But I mean, it's kind of why I got so far in Classic and then was like, I just noped out. Because I did it all in vanilla anyway, and I was just like, Classic will be a fun romp. Did it on launch. Reminded why I wasn't going to do this again, and then like I could probably go and level now. It'll be fine because of it's all the starting zones and all that are going to be chilled out and everything else. But
They were so bad. They were so
they
bad.
were very bad.
And Pete, do you want to go back to Burning Crusade because you saw that Wildhead article?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I didn't see it until you pointed it out. To be fair, my news nose has been a little bit off. So obviously there was somebody got hold of a poll basically asking how people felt about moving over to Classic TBC if it was a thing. Got asked not to share it. It hit the WoW subreddit, about 3 different posts, and then WoW had posted it, and the news is generally out there, and people are reporting on it now. And I don't know. Again, it goes back to a topic we talked about like months ago, Fraz. Like, do we want them to do Classic TBC or do we want them to do Classic Plus? And so
Yeah.
obviously they've decided Classic TBC because they don't have to make anything new. They just have to deal with the servers to, do the thing, and that's up to them. That's that in a nutshell, really, isn't it? Like, that's Blizzard wanting to do that sort of content. So it's fine. I won't go back. I don't think Classic's going to be my bag. Like, TBC was fun. TBC was the first time I got into Raiden. I've got a lot of memories of that. But boy, when I choose a leveling path, do I skip out on doing TBC because it's really bad to level in TBC areas.
Bad.
I'm going to TBC on my Volpera now that I'm 60, only for Lore Master. That's why. I got like the bad zones like Tirakar and Netherstorm done. I just got some of the smaller ones to do.
I'm really hoping that they revisit these zones and adjust some of the questing things. Because some of these quests, like the items, you have to use it like 20 times and it's a 30-second cooldown. It's maddening.
Yeah. And it'll be interesting to see like what the telemetry is of if people now that people don't have to choose between going to Cataclysm vanilla zones, then to Northrend or Burning Crusade, to see which zones people skip to the most.
And I think
no, go ahead.
This goes back to the whole new player issue too that we were facing, where we have new people joining and it's a complete mess. We go from Cataclysm vanilla to BC to Northrend, and it's all over the place. New players have no idea what's going on, so having this unified leveling system should be really good for everyone.
I absolutely agree, 100%.
And I think BFA's...
No, go ahead, Frazley. Go ahead.
BFA is some of the best content I've seen questing wise. I know the story's weird, but the experience of going through it, I think, is really good because it's a new story. I see why they picked BFA over Legion for new players.
Right.
I mean, on that point, I'd argue that the leveling has been really good since Warlords in terms of how they've done questing structure and everything else. I think Legion was the best one that they've done because you could pick any starting zone. It definitely freed people out where they wanted to go. We're going to see a big bottlenecking of people going back into Shadowlands because it is going to be a fixed linear leveling path. So that's going to be different. And seeing those bottlenecks on day one again, I'm not going to have seen those since Wrath, because Cataclysm wasn't... Well, no, Cataclysm was pretty horrible in Vashir. Cataclysm was very bad in Vashir.
The bottleneck in WoD was terrible.
Oh, yeah.
For a Horde, the day that it released, there is an issue with there was this object you had to click, and everyone was right on top of it, so you couldn't click it. Yeah. So yeah, that was...
I think they did it well in Legion because you had there was a lot of pre-questing in Legion to get to Dalaran, and then the biggest thing was moving Dalaran.
Yeah.
And then you had a lot of freedom because the artifacts were all self-sharded, and then you basically chose the zone you wanted to go to. So you had no real problem except for getting the pop-up to do your quest in Dalaran, which obviously came out over several minutes, but once you moved Dalaran, you were free to do whatever you wanted, which was, I thought, was brilliant because we weren't bottlenecked that badly. In terms of Classic, I think the reason a lot of people wanted Classic is because you got to remember that we had a Cataclysm, we had a pre-Cataclysm world for 6 years, and then we've had a post-Cataclysm world longer than we've had a vanilla world in game, and there have been people who wanted to go back and see that sort of world, and then there are people who have been new to the game since Cataclysm, which is over 10 years, nearly over 10 years at this point, of a Cataclysm world, which never saw what vanilla leveling was like. So the draw was there. Classic TBC leveling is still there. There's not a lot they've trimmed out. The only things you're going to miss are going to be the pre-expansion event, which will still happen on Classic stuff anyway. If they do that, we're going to have to see that if they're going to do that with the Gates of Encourage, if they're going to still keep that on Classic. And if they do that, then they'll probably do the pre-TBC event on Classic servers for the Dark Portal opener, which will be cool. A lot of people haven't done that,
No, I saw the beta for it, but I never got to see the event.
But you got to remember, like, the pre-Nax Rammus event, if you were playing before Wrath, it's the same event. Like, there were very little changes, and even then they nerfed the pre-Wrath event because of griefing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a lot there that's going to be fun, but when it comes to TBC, what I'm trying to say is that content already exists. There's not a lot of change that's going to be from having a classic TBC server, other than you're going to have the XP levels that you needed then to level through, which were huge.
It was miserable.
It was
I
horrible.
And then, of course, they're going to get the lovely experience of what it's like to farm 5,000 gold for flying.
Oh,
5,000. Oh, that is right. Wow.
yeah.
Mhm.
It's still 5,000 gold now, Frazley. The difference being is that 5,000 gold back in TBC was a lot harder to make than it is now. Nowadays, it's like you could have a hole in your wallet and 5,000 gold will drop out. You literally make 5,000 gold going from 1 to 120 just from questing.
Yeah.
One thing I do want to talk about Shadowlands leveling as it comes to it, because obviously until we actually see it, and your opinion on this would probably be good, Mephisto, is like a lot of people are going, it's only going to be 1 to 60. It's going to require 1 to 60 numbers. But then I've looked at it and I've gone, if they're literally just going to squish the levels and expect you to do the same amount of content, they're just going to tune the XP numbers. I fully imagine that the same experience that we need from 1 to 120 is going to exist for 1 to 60, and they're going to make it feel like a classic chore, and it's spread out because they want you to do an entire continent's worth. And we even when a new continent's out, you don't do the entire continent and be done by the time you get to 120. What do you feel like? What do you think? I mean, what do you think is going to be the best, and what do you feel like they're going to go with when it comes to Shadowlands?
So I did a lot of looking at that, and judging from what they were saying at BlizzCon and how they want to approach everything, where new players go through Exile Island, then they go to Battle for Azeroth. I really think we're going to probably see around a 14-hour leveling time for new players, approximately. I'm imagining Exile Island's going to be about a 2-hour interaction for 1 to 10.
Yeah.
I say that based on things like with the Worgen starting zone, the Goblin starting zone, the DK starting zones, generally about an hour and a half to 2-hour experiences. And then we're going to go ahead and go into Battle for Azeroth. There's about 12 hours of content there. And I really think that that's going to be the approach. And then we're likely going to see the same leveling scheme that we've had with 50 to 60, where it's approximately 10 hours. We've seen this in WoD, we've seen it in Legion, we've seen it in Battle for Azeroth. They want about an hour per level. So all in all, the leveling experience is going to be better. I'm inclined to agree that we're basically going to see our current leveling time right now, where they have this 100% XP modifier, and we have the same XP amounts that we're going to be going for.
Interesting.
I mean, I could be wrong, and
I guess we'll see once Shadowlands is out and we actually see how it's going to be to level between 1 to 60. I'm just dreading, because obviously Blizzard want 60 to be the hard cap, because 60 is obviously is a better number. It's not as daunting to level to 60 to a newer player, but it's I fear that people are underestimating what they'll do to the XP cap, because I just feel like I've seen it before.
I mean, I've been really so. As soon as I heard a level squish, I was really against it, because the worst leveling experience right now is 1 to 20. When you don't have a lot of abilities, you don't have the ability to choose your specialization, you don't really have any spec identity. And if we're scaling everything out to make leveling feel more rewarding so you get abilities, I feel like it's going to make leveling less fun.
I feel the big problem lies in the fact that if we kept 1 to 120 and they brought in all the Shadowlands changes that they're saying, like choosing your zone, they'll scale the entire zone over everything, and they actually had better rewards between 100 to 120 other than the artifact system and the Heart of Azeroth stuff as incremental rewarding system as you level, I think the game would be fine in terms of a leveling structure, because you have a definitive but there's so many broken systems in place as you level right now, because they're trying to keep everything as it is. So you've got your Cataclysm leveling, you've then got your TBC slash Mists, TBC slash Wrath, then you've got the Cataclysm zones or Mists, then you've got WOD, then you've got Legion, and then you've got BFA. Bear in mind that you've then also got all the broken dungeon queues all mixed out into everything else, whereas they could literally, they've got the scaling system and they could have just put the scaling system into all of the dungeons and just put it all in one queue, which they'll probably end up doing if people are going to be stuck between different paths. I imagine they'll do that, have the scaling for all of it, but keep it in different queue things. So you queue for different expansions dungeons instead of having it all in one big queue, which is essentially time walking for everything, is what I want them to do. But you've got all those broken systems. Then you've got normal leveling where you receive stuff up to 60, and then every like 10 levels or so. I don't think you get anything spellbook wise from 60 to 70 except for any talents, maybe, and I think that's only at 60 and then 75. But then there's just so many broken things in between that, and I don't think just straight squishing the level is the answer to fixing it, when there could be so many other things that they could do in the game to fix that. They've just it's a metaphor that a lot of people use a lot of time, and it's taking a hammer to squash a nail. You know, when they could literally screw that nail in and make the smaller no, with a screwdriver. You've just leveled a mechanome. You should know what these things are.
I know. I know. I just had to try to grind your gears with a pun.
You know what really grinds my gears? Yeah, they take the most drastic approach to things rather than just take smaller approaches to things and fix things in a more throughput manner. You know?
And that right there is one of the things that has me scared, and why I'm excited for Shadowlands, to make sure that they actually took the time to address this stuff, because to really address leveling, the way that everything needs it for these expansion systems and everything, it would require around like 40% of the resources that would normally go to an expansion. I mean, that's a made up number, but if you think about all the work that goes into making an expansion go live and then putting that into readdressing the systems, it's a lot of work. One good example is in WoD, we had a really cool catch-up mechanic, or not a catch-up, a crafted mechanic, where we could create these epic items that were max level, but your alts could use them at level 91. They were epic heirlooms, basically.
Yeah.
They're useless now because of how they do the stat squish. The amount of power they give is not worth the amount that it costs to make them. And how are we going to see that with, say, the Azerite system or the Legion Legendary system? We constantly see Blizzard trying to fix a problem and creating more problems along the way. And just, I mean, good example. I did a whole series of posts on Azerite and heirlooms. That Azerite armor actually levels you faster than wearing all heirlooms. Yeah. So you have to heirloom swap as a result.
It's I get it a lot, because a lot of people look at their heirlooms and go, but if I trade out my heirlooms for my Azerite gives me the stat bonus, but I lose my experience bonus. And I mean, you're only looking at what, 3 pieces, which is a 30% buff, which isn't much in the grand scheme of things, especially with the 100% buff as well take into effect.
It turned out the Azerite gear was 8 minutes faster than wearing all heirlooms.
It's because the way that works with questing, Fraz, is the stats are going to give you higher to push through mobs faster.
That makes sense.
That's 8 minutes. That's 8 minutes over the course of 110 to 120, isn't it?
Yeah. So
which is a lot of time.
When I did the math, this was back when it took about 5.5 hours to go from 110 to 120. But yeah, things like resounding protection, Azerite traits, and of course the huge amount of stamina and strength, they're drastic. I lost 5 minutes on my 11-hour, 36-minute run because I didn't equip my Azerite chest. I was wearing an heirloom chest the entire time.
Yeah, it's bizarre. Just the way the game makes you feel. It's I don't know how it's. Blizzard looks at things in a very weird light, and we've definitely seen that in the recent weeks. And I'm not sure if the current world goings on are having something to do with the way that they're looking at things, and they know people are going to be at their machine for more. And that's why we've got the XP buff. That's why we're getting next week with Reset. We're getting the legacy in Legion loot with which Frazley knows. How many weeks have I asked them to do this?
Oh, a long time.
A long time. Yeah, ever since I can go back and farm it, I want my transmog. Plus, it's Legion loot sells pretty decently in terms of just trash farming. So it goes more towards the
You're talking
long
to a
farm.
huge transmog addict, by the way. I am only missing 7 shoulders in the entire game for plate, and they're all in Battle for Azeroth.
That's not bad.
Are they the Alliance shoulders, or do you have those?
I have those shoulders. I need the Mythic Uldir, Mythic Bod, the 1% drop off from Eternal Palance. Yeah,
A lot of weird stuff. But yeah, the big news this week is obviously, as I just mentioned it offhand, there is legacy loot coming to Legion raids, which is amazing. The amount of times that I've been going into Legion stuff, just go mount farming anyway, and I walk out with maybe gold off a boss because my luck is just trash for drops as it is, and it's going to be massive. If let alone for transmog farming, it's going to be huge. Especially at this point of the expansion, they're literally putting stuff in early so that we've got stuff to do. Because I think Blizzard know that with everything that's going on, there's going to be a longer wait.
Yeah, because I think they don't want us to be a drought of warlords, but they also don't want us to be a rush of BFA. I think they're trying to find that a good balance.
I'd rather them do stuff like this than we get another Hallion raid.
Yeah.
Because Hallion was tacked on, it was done the same week it released, it wasn't tuned properly and everything else. It was fun. The boss itself was fun, and I remember getting cut to pieces when I was down in the Shadow Realm of Hallion. But, for what it was, it wasn't worth the time to just go out, because there were still people that were trying to do Heroic Lich King when Hallion came out, and they hadn't killed it yet.
Hey, Blizzard, micro holidays. You could release a bunch of micro patches, micro holidays.
One of the things that so I like a lot of these changes, but I don't think there's enough meat there to keep people not feeling like this is a drought. And one of the things that I've always been curious about is the pre-expansion events have always been 1 month. And I kind of wonder if it would ever help to start them out 3 months out and slowly ramp them up. So a little bit here, kind of just give people something to want to log in for, or something extra to do if they were already doing something. Yeah. And if they come at the last month, they can still do everything. But in the meantime, say the leveling system change and Shadowlands, if they introduce parts of that as we continue on throughout it, we test the system, okay, this system's work, we can bring it in. I don't think that'll be exactly easy though, because I'm no developer.
So we know that the pre-expansion event is going to be a mixture. It's going to be a spin on the Wrath event, and I think it's going to be a mixture of the Wrath event, and I think it's going to be a mixture of that and Legion, where we'll start with small undead pop-ups over the world, which ramp up over the course of the availability of that pre-expansion event. And we'll obviously have to go ward it off, and there'll be something with Bolvar to do and everything else. I like it. I like the fact that it would ramp up, because it's what the Legion one did. It started off with one every few hours, and then as we got closer to launch, there was they were up nearly all the time. When one finished, the next one would be up. And I like it. I think the biggest problem is when you stick it in so early, yet it allows people to log in and they're not rushed to actually get the content done. But then for those people who are longboy farming, if you suddenly turn around and go 9.0 is going to be in 3 months beforehand, so you've got all this big lead up, they then lose that extra chance that they've got to do.
Oh yeah, I don't think that kind of stuff. I assume longboy is going to be available until the day the expansion launches, with how mounts. Did they specifically say as soon as 9.0?
Specifically said when 9.0 is put into the game, because it comes with the leveling change and the level squish and everything, because it's the big systems. Then it'll be moved into the black market auction house.
That sucks, because I know with
the raid mounts
bosses,
changed to
the
1%
mounts that drop, that they're still allowed to drop until it actually releases. That sucks.
Yeah.
Oof.
Because I am with you on like the pre-patch events. For Legion, I was doing it over the weekend. I was over at my sister's house. In fact, I was doing BFA over the weekend. I mean, they drop at a time that's actually not conducive for gaming.
Well, that was the argument with the Legion invasions that happened during Legion,
Yeah.
and the same argument came up during when they did the faction assaults, because they're on a rotating time schedule and they'll sometimes be up during periods when the majority of the player base will be asleep,
Yeah.
or and most of the time they'll be there when you're working. It happens. It's the things that happen when you've got an MMO in a divisive world. I mean, there are people. As I said last week, sometimes you got to look at things from a game dev point of view rather than a personal point of view.
And true.
And then
why would the horde attack when we're all awake? They would attack when we're asleep.
I mean, sure, that's not a game dev point of view.
Also for like
but,
people in Australia who are awake when we're asleep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the same with the pre-launch event, and I look at it from a game dev point of view. And as I mentioned, I think it was either last week or the week before, one of the big game dev criteria these days is, especially in a world where AAA gaming is essentially one game which goes over many years, the game dev criteria is how long can we keep players playing the game and doing something. And having a shorter window for a pre-launch event for people to log in and do that event, whether it's on a main character, it's an alt character, whatever, to get them up to gear and everything else. That'll be the criteria, and that's why there's smaller things, because it also makes it feel more exclusive.
I can see that. Like whenever I did the Pocket Spell Spreader, I'm like, people are like, "What is that?" I got it during the
Well, you've got to remember that the BFA, no, not BFA, the Legion pre-launch event, you all had the Nether crystals to go farm, and you could get exclusive gear. There were Warglaives for Demon Hunters that you could only get then. There was weapons that you could buy from them, and everything else which were just exclusive to that model. Stuff like that. Like TBC's one had the tabard, which you could get, which they brought back for Wrath, which you could get, which was only available then. The Wrath pre-launch event had stuff specific to it.
They were recolors, if I recall correctly.
They were recolors, yeah, but it kind of a relaunch. It was a slightly different tabard, but the feat of strength still existed. Like, if you had the original tabard from the Nax Ramus pre-opening, and when they did the pre-Wrath, you immediately got the feat of strength because you had the original tabard. But it's just crazy stuff. Like, there's always been something unique for it, even if people refuse to go, "Oh, this is lazy thing." They've still, the content that's still there is best. And remember how people said Legion Invasions being on a timer and just hitting the same zones was lazy, but then people all realised that it was the best way that you could level a character. And Blizzard went, "Oh, people really like this shit. Let's make sure that we have it as a staple going forward in some way or another." And it's, I don't know. It's weird.
I really like the Legion pre-invasion, not even because of the XP, but because it made the world feel under attack.
Yeah.
And
yes. Yeah, absolutely.
That's one of the things that I think is more on the criminal side. Well, I use criminal loosely. Blizzard doesn't utilize a lot of their old zones for current content.
Preach it.
And I definitely, like, the world felt like it was at stake kind of with the Legion invasions, and you saw everyone flooding into these old zones, and it felt so immersive.
Yeah. And like, just like to see like the things there. I mean, I remember being in Cairn, thinking like, wow, I used to level a dwarf and gnome through here, and now like, this is my home I want to protect.
Yeah.
No, I absolutely agree. And I remember everybody saying that exact same sentiment. And I remember raid groups descending upon the Legion invasions and everything else. And then I'd like you to point you towards the Reddit when 8.3 launched, and people went, "Why are we back in the Vale? Why are we back in Ordum? This is lazy. Why didn't they give us new zones?"
And I was thinking that exact same thing as I was saying this, and I agree. I don't know. Like, for that invasion, I feel like it was immersive. When I think 8.3, I think it's boring. And I'm not sure if it's specifically because it's just average content, if we're constantly going to the exact same zones, or what it is. But yeah, I have that same sentiment, and I don't quite understand why.
I think
Well, I wouldn't say lazy though.
the biggest thing, and it's definitely been noticeable with since Legion with the artifact system, is the continuation to make the daily life in the game be busy work. Now, obviously, this is for people at who do end game chores rather than as Frazley does. As I've said many times, this is a diverse show for the people who play at different levels, who like to get a character to end game. They'll do the odd thing, but then they'll go and level another character, or they'll go mount or pet farming. But the amount of busy work that's required at endgame if you want to stay relevant, like when a patch drops, I like to do everything as much as possible to make sure that my character's ready for when the raid opens. And when the raid opens, I want to make sure that I've done my part to make sure I'm as geared as physically possible, which is a lot of stuff.
Yes.
Like, I think on a patch day, I'll be logged in for 8 to 12 hours, maybe more, just making sure I've done everything just on the new content. But then a lot of other people do that, and those are the people that will. And I'll use my mobile games as an example, because mobile games will get a big update or something. They'll get a campaign or something, and it will drop everything, and everybody will rush to those, and they'll go and they'll spend their currency and they'll refresh the stamina to get all the new content done. But then those will be the people that 2-3 days later will go, but there's nothing to do because they've rushed all the content they can physically do. Now, if 8.3 launched with the essence, account-wide essences, I say in quotation marks because of the work you got to do on alts to actually earn those, which is not a bad thing. I like the way they've implemented that. Do the current content, get rewarded without having to go back and do prior content. Good idea, well implemented. Not well implemented. Implemented the best way they could do without thinking about it fair enough in advance. But if it had launched with that, if it had launched with Legion Legacy loot, if it had launched with everything that they've patched in the last 2 to 3 weeks, 8.3 would have been heralded as an expansion savior. And we'll be 2 expansions down the line, and we'll come back and we'll look at this and we'll be like, BFA wasn't that bad. People will say, there are already people, do you remember, there are people that have turned around and they called Cataclysm the worst expansion ever. And now there are people that say Cataclysm is the best expansion ever. There are people that say Warlords was the worst expansion ever. There are people that look back on Warlords fondly. It happens every 2 expansions we get ahead. People will turn around and go, it's the worst expansion to the best expansion, and it happens.
I think part of that also though is one of the biggest issues with Blizzard is every single new expansion completely revamps how they're approaching the game. So we have people like myself who feel Warlords was the best expansion ever released because of how they approached in-game content. You logged in, you did it, and you could do whatever you want. You could just vibe out in your garrison. There are people who loved Legion because of the artifact system, because of legendaries, because they felt like they had activities to do. So everyone who's saying this or is actually talking about their experiences because it connected with them in some way. I think some people are going to like Battle for Azeroth because they like that busy work.
I think people are going to like BFA because they've... the right words I'm looking for here. People look back at expansion as how it was when it ended. They don't look at how the expansion was from beginning to end. Legion, I think, at the beginning of the expansion was pretty fucking terrible, bar from the leveling and the raiding. I thought the artifact system was legitimate garbage. I hated it because of the amount of busy work you had to put into world quests. I hated world quests because they were intrinsically tied to the artifact system because of how to go around and do all that content. And I hated the fact that legendaries dropped as randomly as they did because I didn't get a fucking legendary until 2 months into the fucking game. You know? But if you look back at the end of Legion, people love it because you could gear up a character super fast because of the way that the Argus BOA system dropped loot. Because of the way that they ramped up artifact power, so you could literally get straight to Concordance the minute you stepped into BFA, or well, once you got to max level, that first thing that drops, immediately you're fully capped on artifact power and you're just pushing into Concordance. You know, it was quite easy at the end of Legion to step into stuff, and you did content, and you were rewarded with stuff to be able to buy legendaries, and the RNG system was taken away. And people look at Legion at the end of it rather than the beginning. And the beginning of that expansion was legitimate dog shit.
I still remember how shitty I felt when another warrior on my server got 2 legendaries in the same day.
Yeah.
And I mean, my first legendary, I think it was one of the useless ones. I think like Pridos. Like, I was just like, what am I gonna do with this? Like, I don't feel any excitement having got this. Uh, it.
But this is what I'm saying. Like, we play BFA. 2 months, 2 expansions down the line, when BFA is nothing but a leveling system in a lot of people's eyes, a lot of people will look at it and they'll go, well, at the end of that expansion, you know, I had the ability, if I wanted to go do essences, I could play ults and I could earn them doing various tools because my main's already got stuff. You know, I can earn BFA kind of like level gear and everything else, and all right, the AP system isn't going to be as wildly first, and you're not going to have a massive Heart of Azeroth except by questing. It depends how far Artifact Notch is going to scale you down, but you're going to get pretty far if you want to do any content. It will be a drop in the ocean, and people won't level through it. I think there are better expansions to level through, and unless BFA, because it's going to be the mainstay, especially through Shadowlands, has its XP levels boosted, nobody's going to touch BFA for leveling. I get it. But people will look back at it fondly more than when they were playing it. And it's the same as it's been for every other expansion. People hate the people who are around for an expansion the most and are in every day and do a lot of the stuff and then feel like they're forced to continue to play, don't like the systems in a given expansion, but they'll look back fondly on it. I remember how everybody said Mist was garbage because pandas, before it came out, when it came out, and after it came out. I love Mist because of the way the raiding was. It's got a lot of fond memories for me, as I've mentioned many times before. I think the leveling isn't horrible. It's not brilliant, but it's not bad. You know, there are unique stories to go, which you really can't get anywhere else. It's very serene compared to a lot of places. But people look back at Mist fondly because of the way that classes were back then, how the PvP was back then. You know, this again, some people didn't like the story, but they liked the raiding. It was varied. You know, you had your Mogu, you had the Thunder King, which everybody loves, and then you had Orgrimmar, which then led into Orcs and Wallers, which people hated. But, you know, a lot of people remember things at the end of it rather than how it was when they played through it.
So I got to experience MOP through Warlords. And one of the big, like, I really regret having not gotten to fully playing MOP because of how they told the story. Like, how stories were tied to reputation. So you got honored, you unlocked the story, the world kind of changed around you, you get revered, and the world starts to change more, and you learn more. I love that investment. And I've always wanted to see more content like that because you worked towards the story.
I always felt like the way they drip fed the story through Mists was by far the best way they've ever done a patch cycle. We had the main raid every 6 months, and every 3 months in between, we had a small point something patch. Like, so we had the main story at the beginning, and then in 5.1, we had the offensive in the beach area. I forget, the name eludes me right now, but you had that. And then 5.2, you had the Thunder King, and then 5.3, you had something else, which eludes me right now. But then 5.4 ended on Orgrimmar. 5.3 brought in all the stuff building up to Orgrimmar with the where you were doing the content outside Orgrimmar and fighting like building up the resistance with Vol'jin and Chen and everything else. And then 5.4 was Orgrimmar. There was content in every, like, story content available in every minor patch, and they left their big even patches for the raids. And the way they told it was brilliant. You know, it's. But yeah, we are actually gone way over our time. Well, way over. We're close to the end of it. Before we get into social and everything else, Mephisto, you are doing something this week, in the next week, I believe.
Yes, I'm doing things all April.
All April. Ooh.
Yes. Because April is Autism Awareness Month. We also like to call it Autism Awareness and Acceptance April. It's a really good way to learn about autism, especially since so many people in the gaming community often are often on the spectrum. Should I go into the schedule?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So we're going to be doing a lot of fun stuff. We're starting off April 1st with the mage speed run. I was hesitant to do a event on April 1st, but a warrior leveling a mage is probably the biggest joke I could think of.
Yeah.
So I think it's very on theme, and it should be a fun and engaging experience. We have a Perky Pug carry for N'Zoth with Cyronic. Um, Very awesome people. That's happening at 5 p.m. PST, April 3rd. You just need to be a max level horde character and have your cloak. We're doing an all warrior raid April 4th at 1 p.m. We have 19 warriors signed up so far. We might have a few guest people as well. Not fully sure yet, but it should be a really exciting time. We're doing another all warrior raid for Eternal Palace in Ny'alotha April 11th. We're having a max level warrior brawl April 12th. That's going to involve multiple gladiators. We're going for a 40v40 warrior only. We're having a wild trivia night with the red shirt guy, Ian Bates. Yep. He's going to be reading off questions. He has about 40 written. All of them are incredible. I've read them. It's going to be great. This is going to be happening on Wyrmrest Accord. So your Volpera will be able to join, Fraz.
Yay!
We are going to have a special guest as well with Thunk the Peon from Twitter. It's going to be super, super hype. Hoping for it to be a nice little mixture of RP and non-RP for everyone to really feel involved. We're doing a 20 to 60 dungeon leveling international. So we're going to be trying to level through dungeons as fast as possible. Hopefully we'll have 4 teams of 5 and can kind of cast between them and have a little race. Winner's getting a special rank in our speed leveling Discord. And then lastly, I'm still waiting on approval, but we're going to attempt a Guinness World Record April 23rd for longest time playing World of Warcraft officially. I think there's an unofficial time of like 140 hours by some ridiculous person back during MOP. But
about a week then.
The official current world record is about 32 hours. So we'll be aiming for 35 in accordance with what Guinness World Record sets.
Fair enough. That's huge. If they want to catch any of this, where can they find you?
They can find me on twitch.tv/DesMephisto. I'm also on Twitter, and I also post a ton on Reddit. We actually have a sticky thread currently on Reddit about the charity and everything that's going on. You could also check out our Tiltify campaign, which is just WoW ASAN 2.
I'll have all of the links in the when we get around to actually posting this on Wednesday of this week, guys, which will be now if you're listening to the podcast or watching the vidcast. But yeah, you'll be able to find all the stuff below. As always, guys, all of our Twitter stuff has been above our heads throughout the entirety of the show. Mr. Frazley, where can they find you around the internet if they don't know who you are?
You can find me on Twitter posting puns and stuff at Frazlytastic. Find me every week on Frazzlecast at gnome.podcast.com, where I talk with different people in our community. And you can find me every day doing something strange and out of this world on Twitch at gnome.live.
Ladies and gentlemen, you can find me on my main account on Twitter at Titans Creed. You can find, if you just want to know when stuff's going live on YouTube or Twitch, you can find it at Gaming Phoenix. Otherwise, you can join us live for casts like this with fantastic guests like Mr. Mephisto. And as always, you can join me and Mr. Frazley every Sunday at twitch.tv/Project Phoenix Productions. I do some random streams during the week when I don't feel like death incarnate. Otherwise, you can find the podcast in all your normal good podcast catchers, and you can find this in video form as well as other bits and pieces on youtube.com/Project Phoenix Productions. Thank you very much to our guest this week, DesMephisto.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Glad you enjoyed. Everybody, if you're with us, make sure you go and join some of his charity streams. I'm going to try and make sure I'm around there and everything else when I can. Time permitting, of course. Big EU/US. As always, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us live, or if you've caught us in the forms of the podcast or the VOD. And until next time, as Mr. Frazley always likes to say,
I'm gonna die. I mean, be awesome.